The fresh.
Under top speed, which is good. Yeah, it makes
How do you know it's on the top speed?
because if one pull is the top, then if you go.
Oh, yeah, that's how it goes. Okay, good.
Good morning. Where are we? Mem, on the bottom of Mem Dalet Amud Beis. Bottom of Mem Dalet. 3 lines up. Rabba Babuchana Rav Yochanan. Hakam Odem be'Eved v'Goy. I'm always going to read the Goy. It says Avot Kechavim. It's a censorship. Always doesn't have anything to do with Avodah Zarah. It has to do with the Goy. All these times that it says Avot Kechavim is censorship that got into some Gemaras. So just for practicality, Goy. Eved v'Goy Abal Bas Yisrael Avlad Mamzer. So we have yesterday. The subject was about what makes a mamzer. The Mishnah spoke about what makes a mamzer. Is it chayve krisus only? That's only paskin. Only if the union was the chayve would have been chayve kares. So then the child born of that union is the mamzer. And chayve lavin was the machlokas. Shabbat Kiva said there also was a mamzer, even if the union is only a chayve lavin. Also he says like kedushin anatofis and the kid's a mamzer. But we paskin like the Rabbanan that only if it's chayve kares. So now it comes a chiddush about a goy and eved. Eved is eved Kanani and a goy. We don't have too much eved Kanani nowadays, but the goy is relevant. And if a goy had relations with a Bas Yisrael, so the isser over there is not chayv kares. The isser to have relations between a goy and a Jew is not kares. It's only allowed. So according to what we learned till now, the kid should not be a mamzer.
Of course not.
But he says it is a mamzer. Here it is. Here he comes to say that the child is a mamzer. What's the kol modim mean? Mana kol modim. What does it mean to say Shimon Atimni? He's the one who says that there's only a vlad mamzer from the chayv kares, and the chiddush is even to point in that it's not kares over here, so it shouldn't be a mamzer. It is a mamzer. Afgav dam Shimon Atimni in mamzer mechayv lavin. Hani mili mechayv lavin the tafsi bu kedushin. Avalafa goy ever Shimon go tafsi bu kedushin kechayv krisus dami. The source, the yesod, the principle is really not if it's chayv kares or if it's a chayv lav. The principle is if it's tofes kedushin. Usually by the regular isurim, the regular prohibitions of relations. So the ones that are chayv lav is kedushin does take effect, and by the ones that are chayv kares, the kedushin does not take effect. But here's an exception because the goy and a eved kanani, even though it's only a chayv lavin or even less maybe, but the kedushin is not tofes. Rashi brings the drushes. The Gemara doesn't go into the drushes over here, but the other Gemaras where it talks about that there's no kedushin. If a goy gives money to a Jewish girl to say Aret Mekudeshesli, it doesn't nothing happens, and an Eved also, so there's no kedushin. So if you say that the criteria here is not if it's chayv lav and chayv krisus, but if it's kedushin this tofes, if kedushin takes effect, here kedushin doesn't take effect, so the child should be a mamzer. So based on that, Rabbi Yochanan says that everybody's going to hold that the child is a mamzer. We had a sugya before in the beginning and the end of the first parak if the child is Jewish or not. And that we know that the child is Jewish. The mother is Jewish, so the child is Jewish. But is the child a Jewish mamzer or a Jewish kosher? So our Gemara so far says he's a mamzer. Meisvei kasha from a brisa. Goy be'eved abal bas Yisrael avlad mamzer. Tanakama does say that. But then the Gemara, the brisa continues. Rav Shimon ben Yehuda Omer ein mamzer elam misha surei yisei avav onish kares. That he argues because he says that it's not chayv kares. He says a mamzer. Tanakama seems to hold that even chayv lavin would produce a mamzer. But the Shimon ben Yehuda says that we don't hold like that. We hold like Shimon Atimni that says that a mamzer is only the result of chayv kares, and this is erva which is kares. And over here, since it's not kares, so it should be kosher. So the Brisa says that it's not the universal thing that everybody holds that the child of born from a goy and an eved that had relations with a Jewish girl that vlad is a mamzer. Here it says that it's kosher. Elam Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef is going to revise what Rav Yochanan explained what Rav Yochanan meant to say. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who just go back. Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said that the vlad is mamzer. That's to see the page over there. Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said that. It started off Rabbi Yochanan. He said the vlad mamzer. So now he's coming to explain what he means to say Kol Modim. Everyone knows that as a mamzer. It doesn't mean everybody. Elam Rav Yosef, Mana Kol Modim Rebbe. Rabbi Yochanan meant to say that Rebbe, even though he holds in general like the opinion that only chayv krisus produces a mamzer, but he holds that the goy and eved Abba Bas Yisrael, the child is also going to be a mamzer. Not everybody, but at least Rebbe holds like that. Afal Gav the Rebbe Omer, Ein Dvar Malolo Amur Melo de Rebbe Akiva Shaya Osa Chalutza Ke'erba, V'Leilos Firle. Someplace else later on, it says on the side that Pnun Beis over there, Rebbe says that the certain things that it says over there is only according to Rebbe Akiva. He's the one who says that chayv lavin also produce a mamzer. The words that he says also Chalutza Ke'erba, a little difficulty with that because that doesn't mean that it's a chayv lavin over. Yesterday the Gemara said it means chayv kares, but the gist of the Gemara is to say that only whatever it says over there is only according to Rabbi Akiva that holds Chayve Lavin also makes a mamzer. But the Leilo Svirule, when Rebbe says that's only Rabbi Akiva, he means to say I don't hold like Rabbi Akiva. So as far as what we want to extract out of his Gemara is Rebbe does not hold like Rabbi Akiva. He doesn't know that Chayve Lavin produce a mamzer, only Chayve Krisis. But the Goy, the Eved Modeh, and that's Rebbe's Modeh, not everybody's Modeh. There are opinions that hold that's not a mamzer. But at least I found that Rebbe holds that he's a mamzer, even though in general, the regular rule, he also would hold that only Chayve Krisis produces a mamzer, and here it's not a Chayve Krisis. A Goy in Eved is not Chayve Krisis. And still is a mamzer. How do I know the Rebbe holds like that? The Chiyasur Avdim Yom Rabbi Yitzchak Avdim Yemishim Rabbeinu was Rebbe Yudanasi Goy Be'ever Abba Basisrael Avlad mamzer. So here we have it that Rebbe was quoted as on one hand Rebbe says that Chayve Lavin does not produce a mamzer, but on the other hand he says that the Goy or Eved that have relations with a Jewish girl does make a mamzer. So we see that this is so. And what's the point? Because there's no tfisis kedushin, even though it's only Chayve Lavin. But there's no kedushin. Kedushin doesn't take effect. The Goy cannot affect kedushin. Like Eved cannot affect kedushin. So therefore, the child born is going to be a mamzer. What's the story over here? The more starts the story. Rabacha Sarabira, Rav Tanchum Breder Afchia, Ish Kfar Akko. I don't know who these people are. Parakanu Shubuyosa. They redeemed women that were captured. They were women that were captured by the Goyim, and they redeemed them. The Asume Amon Latveria. So they came from a place called Ammon to Tveria. There was one of these women that was impregnated by a Goy. A Goy had relations with her. She was captive, and the Goy had relations, and she was pregnant from him. So the child that's going to be born was going to be from a Goy that had relations with a Jewish girl. So the question is, the child born, is he going to be a mamzer or not? Also, they came to Rabbi Ami over there in Tveria. Amalahu, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chanina, the Amri, Goy, Bever, Avad, Basisrael, Avad, Mamzer. So he quoted three authorities that hold that the child is a mamzer, even though we hold that Chayve Lavin does not produce a mamzer, but this is different because kedushin doesn't take effect, and therefore it is a mamzer. So Rabbi Yochanan we had before. Rabbi Yochanan is the one who spoke at the beginning of the subject today. Now it says also Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chanina, three big names.
Even if it's a nose, she's on the son.
That's not the subject. Shouldn't make a difference. No difference. That's the point. Is not just her husband or not. You're talking about it's just her husband. We're talking about the child. Is the child a mamzer or not?
She could go back to her husband if he's not a client.
Yeah, the subject is not if she's mutter to her husband. The subject is if the child's a mamzer or not. So far we said Rabbi Yochanan. The more did bring down a brisa that says some holds that's kosher. But as far as the Amoram, Rabbi Yochanan said, and Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chanina, they all passed that the blood is mamzer. So Rabbi Ami said on this case that came to him that this woman that was impregnated by a Goy, that the child is going to be a mamzer. Rav Yosef, Repusel, Meshav Gavri, is it a chiddush to list names? You have a long list of names. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chanina. There's a long list of names. Those are not there. I made this in reddish and this in green to show that these are the ones that are not there. Rabbi Shmuel Bavel, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi, Bakapor, Beis Yisrael. There are two Omeron, Rabbi Shmuel and Bavel, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi and Bakapor and Beis Yisrael. That all of them that say that it's mutter, that the blood is kosher. Some have a different girsa. Amid lachiluf Bakapor v'ayli ziknei dorim. Some say not Rabbi Akapora in Eretz Yisrael, but Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi and Ziknei Dorim. Whoever the Ziknei Dorim is, there's the elders of the south. Some say it's Yerushalayim, some say that it's more south. But anyway, there are those that hold the Amri, Goy, Be'evid, Abol, Basisrael, Avad, Kosher. So that's because you have three names that say that it's a mamzer. I have four names or more that say that the blood is kosher. So we're getting now serious. Now, in the beginning, we just quoted Rabbi Yochanan, and we had one brisa that said kosher, but Rabbi Yochanan said that's a mamzer, and three Amoram that say it's a mamzer. But you have other Amoram, four chashuv names that say that the child is kosher. And the point is because it's not a chayve krisis. Even though they agree that it doesn't, kedushin don't take effect, it doesn't affect kedushin. A goy and a eved cannot make kedushin, but it's only chayve lavin, and therefore maybe the child is not going to be a mamzer. El Amr of Yosef, what the Yosef said, if you have a problem to say that it should be a mamzer, it's not because you have a long list of names. It's because maybe it's Rebbe. It means Rebbe, that is a heavy name. And if Rebbe holds that the blood is a mamzer, which the Gemara proved a second ago, that's what the Gemara quoted before, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Dimi, that says that it's a mamzer. So it's not a question about how many names you have, but you have Rebbe. If Rebbe says that it's a mamzer, that's a big reason that you might hold that it's a mamzer. Which we quoted a couple of lines ago. So at this point, the Gemara is saying that it's a blood mamzer, even though you have these chashuv names that say that it's a kosher, Rav Shmuel, Rav Shmuel ben Levi, Bakapor, Ziknei Dorim. But you have Rebbe. Rebbe holds that the child is a mamzer, so that's the way that we're leaning towards. that the Vlad is going to be a mamzer. The Gemara is going to continue. Abai is going to challenge Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is the one who said this, and we're going to have about 10 lines down that Abai is going to continue the discussion. But we have here something I put in parentheses just to point out that it's a side issue. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omer Avlad Mekulkal. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is quoted as saying that the child is ruined. Mekulkal. He doesn't say mamzer. He doesn't say kosher. He says Mekulkal. What does that mean? Laman. Who is he Mekulkal to? What does it mean that he's ruined? Some problem with this child. If he means that he's a mamzer and he's also to marry any Jewish woman, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. There should be a Yeshua ben Levi Avlad kosher. Means we had a couple of lines ago.
Right?
Yeah, that's the whole. That's today's. That's the whole day today. So Yeshua ben Levi said a couple of lines ago, he's the one who says that it's kosher. And here he says Mekulkal, so he can't mean that it's a mamzer because he himself said that the vlad is kosher. What does he mean? Ella lakuna. He means to say that even though the vlad is kosher, but not to marry a Kohen. If the child is a girl, she can't marry a Kohen. We had this concept yesterday already that even though sometimes the child is not a mamzer, but it's not kosher to marry a Kohen. Even those that hold that it's kosher, even though they say that the vlad is kosher, but still, it's still pagum. Pagum means some kind of blemish that cannot marry a Kohen. And how do you know that? Now we're familiar with this logic already. Yesterday the Gemara spoke about it, that there's a kal v'chomer from Almana. Almana the Kohen Gadol, if the Kohen Gadol has relations with widow, he's not allowed to. Over there it says that the child is chalal, the child is puzzled to kahuna. And over there, it's only allowed. And still the child is puzzled to marry a Kohen. And it's going to be a kal v'chomer. The issa of a man Kohen Gadol is a very specific issa, only to a Kohen Gadol. Nobody else is issa. It's not a strong issa because it only applies to a Kohen Gadol. And over there, even there, it's a small issa. It makes the child is possible to kuna. So kal v'chomer that here it's an issa which applies to everybody, a goy and an eved. No one's allowed to marry. So surely the child is going to be possible to kuna. The Gemara yesterday said that there's a way to challenge this kal v'chomer. That here is worse. Almana, maybe you see is worse because she also becomes mischalel. She asks for mischalelis that the relation, the union that the Kohen Gadol had with Almana makes that she herself also cannot marry a Kohen anymore. So maybe that's worse. But the Gemara says here that here's no pircha. The Ma'ala Kohen Gadol shekain he asked for mischalelis. Yesterday we spoke about the different sugya. We said over there that you can't learn to other yisurim because only where the woman herself becomes puzzle, then you can say that the child also becomes puzzle. But here the Gemara says that's not a problem. That when a goy or an eved has relations with a woman, Chitaka does become puzzle to Kuhana. So there's no kash on the kal v'chomer. We're talking about the child. The child is puzzled. The Gemara says maybe you can't learn out the child is puzzled because maybe only when the mother is puzzled. So the Gemara says yes, the mother is puzzled also. If the woman has that has relations with the goy, she becomes puzzled to a Kohen. A goy that had relations with a woman, no difference if she's the daughter of a Kohen, the daughter of a Levi, the daughter of Israel, no difference. She becomes now puzzled to kuna. She can't do truma. She can't marry a Kohen anymore. If her husband is a Kohen, she can't stay married to him. Shenemo Ubas Kohen. There's a drasha now to say that she herself becomes puzzled. Ubas Kohen Kisiyal Mano Busha. Over there talks about that she was a daughter of a Kohen and then she married Israel. She can't eat truma. Once she marries Israel, she cannot eat truma. Then if her husband dies or divorces her, she can go back to her father's house and eat truma again. But there's a drasha to say only if the relationship was to somebody who when he dies, she becomes an almana. When he divorces her, she becomes divorced. The guy and the eved, they have no connection of being widowed from him or divorced from him. There is no marriage. So there was a drush over there to say that once she had relations with a guy or an eved, she's puzzled to kuna. That was a side point. It's a side point. It is not an issue. The point was to say that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said that even though he holds that the blood is kosher, not a mamzer, but puzzled to kuna. And the Gemara says not only him, everybody. All the Amorim that say that the child born of a union of a goy and a bas Yisrael, even though it's not a mamzer, according to those, all that's not a mamzer, but surely puzzle tikuna. And it's not. I don't see the Gemara is going to come back to that again. The Gemara is going to continue with the discussion if the child is a mamzer or not. But now we have it. Even if the child is not a mamzer, but surely not to marry a kohen.
And that's not law.
That should be the halacha. Yeah. So that happens if there are many in our generation. You have people that their mother is Jewish and their father is a goy. So Agama is talking about if the child is a mamzer or not. We know the answer is going to come out that's not a mamzer, even though we're going through the stages, but we know the maskana. But here the Gemara says that they're not allowed to marry a Kohen. A girl whose father is a guy is not allowed to marry a Kohen.
And that's one of the biggest things with the Baal to a girl before they set her up.
You have to make sure not to be a Kohen.
Not only that, but they asked if she had relationships with a guy. If she did, then they don't set her up with a Kohen.
Right. Even if her parents both are
Yeah,
Jewish.
both are
So one
Jewish.
question is if the parents are Jewish, and if the father is not.
Did she ever have an affair with a non-Jew?
Mhm.
That's the question.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a Kohen, and it's very difficult to get married.
That's right, because in Belgium,
The older
most of the
Balkan,
girls, most of the Belgian girls have relationships with non-Jews.
The Gemara continues about the issue, is it a mamzer or not? It means we put in parentheses the issue about marrying a Kohen, but now back to the main subject is the kid of mamzer. It's much worse than not marrying a Kohen. So before the Gemara said the story that the captives came to Tveria, and the question was who the pastor like. Rabbi Yochanan or Belazar Chanina said that kid is a mamzer. That's what Rami wanted to say. Rabbi Yosef said that's not a reason to say it's a mamzer because you have Rav, Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi, Bar Kapara, maybe Ziknei Dom, they all thought that was kosher. But if anything, Rabbi Yosef said the reason why to be machmir is because Rebbe was quoted as saying that the Vlad is a mamzer, that might be a reason to be machmir. But now Abaye challenges that also. Abaye said to Rabbi Yosef, my chazis the samchas ad Rav Dimi, small chad Rav. It means it's not so simple what Rebbe holds himself. Till now we quoted Rebbe as being the one to say that the child is a mamzer. We had Rav Dimi in the name of Yitzchak Rav Dimi in the name of Rebbe. But not so simple because others quote Rebbe as saying that the Vlad is kosher. The Chiyasa Ravin, Rabbi Nassan, Ravin said, Rabbi Nassan, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, more in Belatera, that Rabbi Nassan and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, two pascal that she's mother, that not she, that in this case, that the child is kosher, that the guy or the Eved who had relations with a Jewish woman, the child is not a mamzer. Well, man Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rebbe. It says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Well, we know Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is Rebbe, so it's a machlokas, what Rebbe said. So it's not so simple to say that the Vlad is mamzer, because Rebbe himself, you have the whole list of Amaram before, Rabbi Shmuel, etc. So it's Rebbe also, it's not so simple what he said. So maybe it's a big shot to say that the Vlad is kosher. Not more means other Amaram that say that the Vlad is kosher, and some stories also. But yeah, this is a very interesting story. Rav also passes that the child is kosher. Somebody came, a man came to in front of Rav, and he said, what's the din if a guy or Eved has relations with a Jewish woman? What's the child? Amalu, Vlad kosher. So Rav said that Vlad is not a mamzer. So he said, that's me. I'm that. My father is a guy. And I want to marry your daughter. Yeah, I want to marry your daughter. He said to Rav, I'm kosher? You just passed it, I'm kosher, right? So he said, he asked a theoretical question, a guy. Then he said, give me your daughter in marriage, because my father is a guy. But you just said that I'm kosher, I'm not a mamzer. So give me your daughter. I would have said that Rav would say there's other criteria to get my daughter besides being Jewish, besides not being a mamzer. But the issue we're going to see was his lineage, that even though he's kosher, but still it's not considered the best lineage. So, lo yevamos. So Rav said, no, I'm not going to give you my daughter. Amar lei shimi b'achil Rav. So there was a Talmud of Rav over there, and he told the Rav that if you pass him that as mutter, why not give him your daughter? Like you said that he's kosher, he's not a mamzer. I'm reading to you, the expression goes, there's an expression that goes that there's a camel in Media and out there in Persia or someplace that is able to dance on a cob. A cob is a small box, or it means on the box or in the box means like a real feat, like you have an elephant can do common tricks. There's a camel over there in Madai. It means the expression people want to say that far away there's a big miracle, that a big feat, but we want to see it. We want to see that, prove yourself. You say in this kosher, let's see what you can do. So here the question, here we have the box and we have the camel and we have Madai, everything's there, but it's not dancing. It means that you're not acting upon your psak. If you have such a big chiddush, but prove it. Like, do an act. So give your daughter. So show everybody that the blood is kosher.
The Talmud of Rav.
The Talmud of Rav told Rav that if you hold that he's kosher, so why not? There must have been a Talmud.
Who was the man who asked for his daughter?
It doesn't say his name. His father was a guy,
Right.
and it sounds like a big chutzpah. He's asking Rav to be his daughter because he passed that he's kosher. But Sim Bachir also said that it's an opportunity to show you, to prove your point that the blood is kosher. Give your daughter. So Rav said, even if it'd be a big tzaddik like Yeshua ben Nun, I'm not going to give him my daughter because the yichus is not the greatest. Means he didn't say the reason I'm not giving it my daughter is because he's missing other criteria. He doesn't have good midos or whatever. He doesn't have now Talmud Chacham. That's not the problem. The problem is because his yichus is not the greatest. Even though I say blood kosher, okay, it's kosher, but it's not mahadrin. It's not the best. So I wouldn't give my daughter to him even if he'd be great tzaddik like Yeshua ben Nun. Amalei. So Avshin Barchia said, if he'd be like Yeshua ben Nun, he wouldn't have a problem getting a shidduch. If he'd be like greater like Yeshua ben Nun, if you wouldn't give him your daughter, somebody else would give. Someone else would give him his daughter. But here, hi, this person, if you're not going to give me a daughter, no one's going to marry him. So give me a daughter. If you hold that he's kosher, so give me a daughter. But Rav didn't agree. And the man over there, he was a bit stubborn. The man was not moving. He was standing over there. He wants Rav's daughter. Rav looked at him and he died. Means Adkan. Like,
but why did he deserve it? He knows that he's misguided.
okay.
I
No,
don't know if he meant after being mechutza. Like
No, but he's pushing. Rav said, I'm not giving my daughter, and he's standing over there.
To die.
I don't know if he deserves to die, but like he doesn't deserve to stand over there. And he's still
So, but that's not okay. You have any mashma like he did something that he should not.
I don't know, but it means like he's going past his
But no, I hear he definitely wanted to do the right thing, but I don't know why it's so far to die for that.
Listen, we see by Gedolim, I heard of this Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and other people. Oh, you're a ger, you're a Baal Tshuva, you're tzaddikim, but their children don't marry Baal Tshuva.
They're right, but why?
Shmuel Auerbach married, and the Valley Ashav and the Kanievskis. I mean, they keep together the Gedolim. They even though you're a big tzaddik, Baal Tshuva, ger, but they don't mix.
I got
it. Not this Gemara, but the Gemara does say that it's lachatchila preferable to marry somebody a similar background.
Okay.
It's not dafka. Here the Gemara is talking about yichus. Here the Gemara is talking about yichus. Here the Gemara is saying giving Yeshua, but the Gemara is stressing the point about the lineage alone. But the regular case that people marry within the Gemara says lachatchila marry ben iro, marry from the same city. Because same mentality. There are enough differences without that, so you don't have to make more differences. That one is going to be Hungarian, one is Polish. Stay with the same background. That it should be less friction. But here, we're talking about the yichus.
The Katholic meeting Rabbi Yashiv for the shidduch of Kanievsky with Rabbi Yashiv's daughter, and they didn't say a word to each other. And then when he left, he says, "Oh, he's a big tzaddik." This is Rabbi Yashiv is a good shidduch. They didn't say one word to each other, but you knew. So we have already. Rav is also the story is a beautiful story, but it comes out that Rav holds that also the vlad is kosher. That's the main point we wanted. We had the whole issue about giving his daughter, okay, but it might see is kosher. You do see agav, they even know it's kosher, but it's not the mahadrin yichus, it's not the best, and there's a reason to hold back if someone has a better option. But the Gemara continues. Rav Matana Mora Bolatera, or Matana also doesn't say any stories about him. Rav Yehuda Mora Bolatera, Rav Yehuda also says that it's mutter the chiyasa like made Rav Yehuda. When such a case becomes Rav Yehuda, somebody whose father was a goy, Amalei Zil Itma Itamar or Nesiv Asminach. You tell them go and hide means don't publicize yourself, and people won't know who you are, and they'll give you a shidduch like anybody else. Means you don't have to do investigation. If someone comes and he's assumed Jewish, you're allowed to assume that he's Jewish and some yuchas, and you are kosher, so you don't have to tell anybody. It is an interesting point that the Gemara seems to say you don't have to tell anybody. And since you are Jewish, so go to a community. They're not going to know who you are. They'll assume that you're Jewish, and your father's Jewish, your mother's Jewish, and you can marry. If not, then go marry somebody like you. Go marry somebody, a girl who also his father is a guy, because you're not going to get any other shidduch. And also Rav also that is kosher. Amalei Goli or Nesibas Minachid, the go to exile means same idea. Go to a place they don't know you, and you'll get a good shidduch. You get a regular shidduch. And if not, then marry somebody who's like you in the same boat, that the father is a guy, and you're kosher, she's kosher. But all of these people said that is kosher. So we have in the green the list of people that say that the blood is kosher. That is Rav, Shmuel, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Bar Kapara, Ziknei Dora. Rabbi is Machlokis. Then you have also Rav Nosson also is quoted, Atana also quoted as saying that is kosher. Rav Matana, Rav Yehuda, and Rava. A long list of people that all hold that the blood is kosher. The Gemara starts now. We're going to come back to this again, come back to the Psak and Amud Beis, but the Gemara does continue with another twist about the subject. The city, the people of the city of Michsi, I don't know what it is, they sent to Rabbah. Rabbah also seems to hold that the blood is kosher. He's also on the list. We can make that list also. Might as well put him in also on the green. No, wrong color. 1 second. Sorry about that. That's also a Rabbah over here. The Rabbah also holds that he's kosher. So they asked him a question. Till now we spoke about an Eved, a complete slave, Eved Kanani, that had relations with a Jewish woman, and we said kosher or not, and we came out so far, most people hold kosher. How about if he was half a slave? He wasn't a full slave, he was a Chetzi ben Choron. How do you have that? That he had 2 masters, they were partners, and one of them freed him, or you had a master that he freed half of him. There's such a thing that a person could legally be half Eved, half a free man. And he had relations with the Jewish girl.
So the question doesn't make sense. We just finished saying that even if he's a complete Eved,
Right.
there's not discussion. Amalei has to Eved Kulo or Mir kosher. So even if he'd be a complete Eved and had relations with a Jewish woman that the Vlad is kosher, so surely half an Eved doesn't make him worse. So the Gemara now presents what the problem is. I'm Rav Yosef, Mordech Maita Manu, Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda is one of those that said a second ago that Vlad kosher. He also was on the list. He said that the Vlad kosher, the Eved that had relations with the Bas himself says something is worse by a Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Chorin. From Rav Yehuda, Misha Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Chorin, Abba Bas Yisrael, also Vlad, they know Takana. He seems to say there's a problem with the child, and doesn't make sense because he said even if the father would be a complete Eved, if Vlad is kosher, so how could he say that if he's only half Eved, then there's a problem? Ain't no Takana, here's a problem. Rashi says he's a mamzer, he can't marry. Well, how could that be? So the Gemara has difficulty. What does he mean to say? What's wrong with the Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Chorin? How could it be worse? Kiyit Mad Rav Yehuda. Go into Kaddish Bas Yisrael. They made Kedushin. Tell him he's not spoken about he had relations, but he had relations. Doesn't know he didn't marry her. But now the question is that he actually gave her Kedushin. When an Eved gives Kedushin, so there's no Kedushin. We said Kedushin doesn't take effect. But over here, the Kedushin does take effect on the Chatzi, the fact that he's a Chatzi Ben Chorin. So the Kedushin that he did does somewhat take effect. So now she's a Eshes Ish also.
Because he's half Jewish, Kilo.
He's half Ben Chorin. The Ben Chorin is mama's Jewish. He's a freed slave. A freed slave is almost like a Jew. So he gave Kedushin to a woman. So that part of him means half of him only. How do you divide that? But half, he's somewhat Jewish. So when he gave her Kedushin, so it's true, the part of the Eved couldn't make Kedushin, but the part of the Ben Chorin could make Kedushin. So she's somewhat married woman. Because now we didn't talk about this yet. The whole sugi we spoke about, the Naman Aleph, about the Goy, Eved Abal Bas Yisrael. We didn't talk about if she's married. He just talked about Bas Yisrael, she's Jewish, that she was unmarried. She's not married. So we spoke about that. It doesn't make the Falada Mamzer. Is it worse if she's a married woman? Is it worse if she's a goy or an Eved that had relations with a married woman? Is reason to be worse? So at this point, the Gemara thinks that it's worse. So the fact that now the half Ben Chorin of him did affect Kedushin halfway, so she's a bit of a married woman. So now the fact that part of him is an Eved, so part of him affected Kedushin. Now the other part of him is having relations with a woman who's married, happens to be married to him. That's a big shidduch. That is called that he's having relations with a married woman, even though it's the same person. He's half the Eved Chatzi Ben Chorin. So he's the same.
She becomes an adulteress.
Why?
She becomes an adulteress.
Why?
She's married.
Who does she have relations with?
The Eved.
The Chatzi Ben Chorin married her.
Oh, married her.
But the marriage takes part halfway. Only the part of his Ben Chorin is able to affect the marriage, and the rest of him is still an Eved. So the Gemara looks at it like the Eved part of him is having relations with it's the same person, it's the same husband, but it's having relations with the part that's married. And we don't talk about this yet. What's the thing about the Eved who or the girl who had relations with a married Jewish woman?
Yeah.
The same case that we spoke about till now. But we didn't talk about if she's married.
Right.
What if she's a married woman?
Yeah,
Does it make it worse the fact that he's a guy and an Eved that had relations with a married woman? So at this point, the Gemara thinks that it's worse. And not only if it's from a different man, even if it's the same man, the Chatzi Ben Chorin, that part of him succeeded in making her into a married woman, and now the other part of him, which is the Eved, is having relations with this married woman. Shekadish Basra that he made Kedushin. The Nimsa Tzarav the Shabbat Mishtamesh Beishesish, that the part of him which is an Eved is having relations with the part of her which is married. But now the Gemara says it's not true. That what we spoke about the whole Gemara, Namar Aleph, that says that Goy or an Eved that have relations with a Jewish woman, the Vlad is kosher, is even if she's a married woman. At this point, the Gemara didn't think so. The Gemara said now that if she's married is worse. But now the Gemara says, Amin Adar Mishmei Rav Yaakov, Divya Posel Afilu B'Pnuya, Divya Machshe Afilu Be'eshesish. In the Chalkis we had Namar Aleph. We had two opinions in Namar Aleph. Some say that the child is a mamzer. Some say the child is kosher. Now we're saying that this is irrelevant if she's married or not. The ones hold that she's puzzle, that the kid is a mamzer, is even if the mother was not married. The girl had relations with a non-married woman. The child is a mamzer. That's what they hold, even if she's not married. And those hold that as kosher, even if she's married. Even if the guy had relations with a married Jewish woman, also they hold that as kosher. It means it's an extreme machlokes. It has nothing to do with being married. If you hold that the child is a mamzer, it's even because the relation of the guy and the Eved, then even if the woman was not married. And if you hold that the child is the kosher, even if the woman was married.
But today, if a married lady has an affair with somebody.
Who's the somebody?
A Jew or a
No,
non-Jew.
no.
Okay, so let's say.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so let's say she has an affair with a Jewish boy.
So then the child born is a mamzer.
Is a mamzer.
Because she's a sister that have relations
Right.
with a man.
And
But
then
here,
goy.
but a goy, that's what it says. That's what we're talking about now. That the one who says that goy, ve'eved al babas Yisrael, the blood is kosher, is even if she's married.
Wow, so it would be better for her to have an affair with a guy, because then at least her child is kosher. I'm just saying like that. Okay.
No, response.
If you ask, if you ask, is the child? It's true that the child born of the Jew is a mamzer. The child born of a goy is not a mamzer.
Wow.
That's what the Gemara talks about now. The Gemara thought for a second that if the child is, if the woman is married, then it's worse. Then even if you hold the blood is kosher, but if the woman is married, maybe it's a mamzer. But then the Gemara says no. Rabbi Yaakov says no. That the one who holds that it's a mamzer is even if the woman is not married. The one who holds that the child is kosher is even if the woman is married.
I could take Moshe's case. If a woman's captive, there's two people, two captors, and the Jewish captor wants to live with her. It would be better to convince to get herself to the Goyish captor. And of course, because it wouldn't be Yarag Vayav. It's not Yarag Vayav, right?
I don't know. Yeah, but by a woman also, anyways, yeah, it's not talking about Yava by a woman because it's called Karka Olam, but I don't know the subjects, so I can't talk about it.
Okay.
The Gemara, I think it's something that's happened over here. I think the next couple of lines is like more or less a parenthesis, which goes into another reason of why we say kosher or not. Means in the beginning, when I presented the sugya, at the beginning of the sugya, I said that the reason to say that it's a mamzer is because there's no tfisis kedushin. The reason to say that it is not a mamzer is because only a love. That's how I presented it simply. That's how I think that's a simple presentation. Here the Gemara is a different drasha to say why it might be kosher or not. This regardless about Eshes. Eshes, the Gemara is not going to bring into this parentheses over here. The question is, the goy, the Eved, Abba, Bas Yisrael, is the child, the mamzer or not? And both have learned out from Eshes. Eshes means to have relations with the father's wife. And Rashi says that the reason why we're talking about a father's wife is because the din of a mamzer says right next to that parasha of not having relation with the father's wife. And from there we learn out that that's the classical case of a mamzer. If somebody would have had relation with his father's wife, the child born is going to be a mamzer. Man the apostle Sava Ma Ishisav the Lo Tafsi Bakadushin Avlad Mamzer. I've called the Lo Tafsi Bakadushin Avlad Mamzer. We learn it from the cat case. That's the classical case. Over there's no kedushin doesn't take effect because it's Chayav B'Koros, so the kedushin doesn't take effect, and therefore the child is a mamzer. So any case which there's no kedushin, also the blood is a mamzer. So therefore they say that Eved v'Goy, even though it's not Chayav B'Koros, but there's no kedushin taking effect. So therefore the kid should be a mamzer. That's why the Gemara started in the beginning. But that it's different. Over there, you can learn out that there's no kedushin doesn't take effect for him. That means the man who is going to have relations with his father's wife, over there's no kedushin. But the woman, the person himself, he has the power to affect kedushin. The man has the power to affect kedushin. That's what the right woman. He's Jewish. He has the right woman. He can make kedushin. But the guy in the Eved, they can't make kedushin at all. So that's not in the parsha. We don't mean to exclude and say that that's not the case of the comparison to say that that's also not topus kedushin and therefore the kid is a mamzer. So this was a drasha to talk about, do we say avlad kosher, do we say avlad mamzer? But that's not the main point. The main point was what the Rabbi Yaakov said, that there's no difference if she's a married woman or not. The one who says that Eved v'goy abba bas Yisrael avlad kosher is even if the woman was married woman. The Gemara now is back to the problem. It doesn't make sense. So if you on top of the page was quoted as saying something that so far doesn't make sense. He said that that had relations with a woman, a Jewish woman, the child is a problematic. What's the problem? He holds even if the father would have been a complete Eved and a Goy, also the child is kosher. So what is it worth that he's a Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Choron? It doesn't make sense. So the Gemara now finds a solution. Not the case of Eved the Isha that now he's being not that the Eved is Makadasher, and the problem is now that the Eved is having relations with the Ishasish. That's not the problem. The Eved having relations with the Ishasish, also the Vlad will be kosher. The problem is that she's the Ishasish, and now the Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Choron, the problem is the half of him that's free. Means a regular Jewish man, like you said, Moshe said, a Jewish man that has relations with Ishasish is a mamzer. This man is half Jewish, half Eved. So the Jewish part of him is the problem. She's a married woman. She's a married woman already. And now this Chatzi Ben Choron has relations with her. So the Chatzi Evet part wouldn't make the child to be of mamzer, but the Chatzi Jewish part, that's the problem. So that kid, so what's the din of the kid?
Suffolk mamzer.
A suffix mamzer or a,
No, it has to be whole mamzer.
why is the whole mamzer?
Because it's 50-50, so
It's a 50-50, so why are you saying it's a whole mamzer?
Because you have to go to Chomer,
But it's a half a mamzer.
okay?
No,
But you can't
no.
make it half a mamzer.
Yeah,
So it has to
no,
be-
but you said that it's not so simple. If you make a mamzer, you can marry mamzeres.
Right.
Is he allowed to marry mamzeres? A mamzer is allowed to marry a mamzeres.
Oh.
Not a mamzer
Right.
cannot.
Oh.
So this is now, it comes out when it says in the top. So that's what it says, Ein Lo Takana. At the beginning of the time, it said Ein Lo Takana, so Rashi just meant that as a mamzer. Now it comes out much different. Ein Lo Takana means that he has no weights, he can't marry anybody. Because he can't
Somebody
marry,
like him, you have to 50-50.
yeah, he has to marry somebody else. I don't, yeah,
What,
I'm not sure if that, not a
That's-
suffix, it's
that's what-
half. He's a half,
I
the
know
child.
50-50 would be good also.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be good, because it could be that the 50 is gonna, it's a, so it says Ein Lo Takana, could be, could marry anybody. Because that's not a regular case, but a
Right.
Chatzi ben Chorin that had relations with a married woman, so the child born is a half a mamzer. And Rashi doesn't speak this out, but the Rambam seems to say, the Rambam Shulchan Aruch, they say that he can't marry even a shivcha, he can't marry anybody. He's a half a mamzer, you can't marry the one that mamzer is allowed to marry, you can't marry the one that a Jewish woman's man is allowed to marry because he's a half a mamzer. So now the Ein Lo Takana comes out even clearer, that Ein Lo Takana, he can't marry anybody. Amar Ravina. Now the Gemara is going to go back to what you spoke about. Is a married woman worse? I can make a little period over here.
So today we don't have to worry about this, because there's no obvious, right? Today.
We don't have an evid now. It's theoretically it could be, but people don't do it. It's possible to have an evid if someone would be told the same of the same way make a ger. I don't know if it's legal nowadays, but there is such a thing conceptually in the Shulchan Aruch. There's no if they would, it is possible to have an evid if someone would want. Amar Ravina, Amar Li Rav Gaza. Rav Gaza told me, Ikla Rav Yossi bar Oben Asrin. Rav Yossi came to our city. Actually, there's a story about a guy that had relations with an unmarried woman, Jewish woman, and he said that the blood is kosher. But there was a story by Ish. There was a woman, a story that a guy or an eved had relations with a married woman, and he said the child is a mamzer, which is against what we said. Here on top of the page in the blue over there, we said, Rabbi Yaakov said there's no difference. Pnuya, Ish says no difference. If you hold kosher, if you hold puzzle. Here we said there's a difference. Rabbi Yossi bar Oben is quoted as saying that if there was a union between a pnuya, so then the child is kosher. But if she was Ashish, the child is a mamzer. Rav Sheshes, no, you got it wrong. I heard the story from Rav Gaza myself. He said it's not a Beis Bavan as you quoted it. It was a Beis Vida, and it wasn't the way you quoted that by Ashish partial. But back to what we said before, the same as before, that even if the woman is Ashish, also the child will be kosher. Amalei Ravacha Brei de Rava or Rava the Ravina. Ikla Memel Asrin Va'achshe Ben B'Pnui Ben Beishasish. Also the same thing that Amemi came to our city and he said that no difference if the woman is married or unmarried, the child is kosher, even married. And now comes the end of the sugya, the Ilchasa, which we started off today. Goy ve'eved abba bas Yisrael avad kosher Ben B'Pnui Ben Beishasish. That if the goy or eved have relations with the Jewish woman, no difference if she's not married, even if she's married, the blood is not a mamzer. That's the end of the sugya, more or less. Goes a little further. Rava said that Rav Mari bar Rachel is kosher. Rav Mari bar Rachel was such a case that Rav Mari is called by his mother's name. Rav Mari is the daughter of Rachel. Why is he not called by his father's name? Because his father was a goy. And that's the case that I think the Gemara says that Rachel was maybe even the daughter of Shmuel that was captured, and this guy had relations with her. Afterwards, he became a ger. And he married her, but he impregnated her when he was a goy. So he's the case that this Rav Mari, he became a Rav Mari. But his father was a goy at the time when he had relations with his mother. And Rav said that he's kosher. We had Rav before already. Rav was that a goy, according to the other sheets, would have been a mamzer. But we pass on like this, that the goy, the child is kosher, Rav Mari is kosher. Gemara even says more. Not only did he make him kosher, he made him some kind of a position. He gave him a certain position, some kind of an authority. And the halach is not supposed to give a position of authority to a ger. Even though it's talking about a king, that a king has to be mekar b'checha, but not only a king, any kind of position of authority has to be from a born Jew, not from a ger. But his mother was Jewish.
No.
So that's called a
He
Jew.
was all the time.
If he'd be a mamash ger on both sides, so that he was a goy and became a ger, he doesn't get a position. But since his mother's Jewish, he's considered Jewish, and that's enough to even get a position.
And he was his son-in-law. No, that's not.
Whose son-in-law?
Oh, Rob was the guy. I thought it was the daughter. It was his daughter that married his son. No.
Although we can stop here, but we'll start here again tomorrow. But just to continue the story a little bit, we'll come back. Now starts a new story more about gerus, more about conversion, but we'll start this. The slave, the Eved of Avchia Bar Ami, he was a slave, he was Eved Kanani. Avchia Bar Ami had an Eved Kanani, and he wanted a certain Goya, he wanted to marry a certain Goya, and he immersed her, means he told her to go to the mikveh for the purpose of being his wife. Means she shouldn't be a Nida. She was a Goya, and he's telling her to go to the mikveh in order that she should be his wife.
She's a Goya.
She's a Goya.
What's that going to help the Goya to happen?
So the Gemara is going to say that this is going to make her Jewish. Amr Yosef, I could make her kosher. Now the problem is also the Eved, he didn't realize making a big problem because he's making her Jewish maybe, but he's an Eved. So he's making her better than he is. First, she was a Goya, but now it could be that he accomplished making her Jewish, and he can't have relations with her because he's a Eved. He didn't progress. He didn't go further. He's still an Eved. And he made the woman from a Goya to become Jewish, but he's still an Eved. So the child born is going to be an Eved, Haba al Bas Yisrael, even if he succeeded in making the woman Jewish, but the child now is going to be, so let's say, that's one, that Vlad is kosher. Right. So Yosef said, I can make her kosher, a Jewish, and I can make her son also not to be a mamzer. Right. But, we'll see in a second where Ravasi says, that it says in a second, the Gemara is going to be a story and say that if she went to the mikvah for the purpose of not getting out of her nida state, that also makes her into a gioris. That's a big problem. We'll see it tomorrow. We're not going to do it tonight. But it seems to say that if a woman went to the mikvah, that for the purpose of nida, it makes her into a gioris. We'll see more about that. But that's why, since he told her to go to the mikvah for the purpose of marriage, that would make her into a gioris also. And as far as her daughter, Bebrata, is also going to be kosher, even though he's an Eved and his wife now is Jewish. That the child is not going to be a mamzer because even though he's an Eved and he shouldn't have had relations with her as usher, and we'll stop him from now on. He can't have relations with her. You're an Eved, she's Jewish, but the child born would be kosher. The Gemara says a story about Ravasi. Before we said Ravasi, what does Ravasi say about this conversion? They used to call, there was a man, he called him like he's the son of a Goya. That there was some problem about his mother was a Goya, and they called him the son of a Goy. They say he's a Goy. Did she not go to the mikvah for her? Neither means she was acting in the Jewish way. She was Torah observant, and she went to the mikvah. So the fact that she went to the mikvah for her nidas seems to make her a gioris also. That needs explanation. We're not doing it today. We'll come to it tomorrow. One more story. There was someone who used to call him the son of a Goy, that his father was a Goy. Amar Rabbi Shulman Levi, Milo Tavel Akirio, is the father a Goy? He didn't never go to the mikvah because he was a Balkari. So going to the mikvah for Balkari also was enough to make him into a ger. Of course, needs explanation. Going to the mikvah for Keri doesn't make him into a ger. And also the more before about Anida, but just brought it in because the end of the story that it said that I can make the daughter kosher even if she became Jewish. We'll see tomorrow more about that. But how could the daughter? Why is the daughter born kosher? It was an Eved that had relations with a Eved, and the answer is Eved Goya Bar Yisrael Blood Kosher. So that's the end of the sugya. It was a long sugya today, but one sugya, the whole sugya ends up the way we just passed now. In the end, Ilchasa Goy the Eved Bar Yisrael Blood Kosher, even if she's a married woman. And as we had before, we did have something in the beginning of the sugya that Rav, even though the blood is kosher, but he didn't want to give his daughter. It means it's not the Mahadrin, it's not the greatest yichus, even though it's kosher. And also we had that it is Kulkul Lakuna, that the girl cannot marry a Kohen. Rashi points out that if the child is a boy, so there's no marry to marry a Kohenes. There's no restrictions on the daughter of a Kohen to who to marry. It's only on the daughter on the men cannot marry any kind of girl. But Did I say, what did I say just now?
Yeah. A girl that comes from a Kohen family can marry whatever.
Right, if this is the man who, no, again, what did I say? The girl, if the problematic person is a boy, he has no problem to marry daughter of a Kohen.
Right.
To marry a daughter of a Kohen is not special restrictions,
So
but a Kohen has to marry special. So a Kohen, right?
A boy that comes from that his father is not Jewish can marry
A daughter of a Kohen, right? But daughter marry a son. The daughter was the son of a goy.
Right,
Cannot marry a Kohen.
Right.
Okay, Yashikor, we finished a little bit earlier today. Yashikor, thank you, everybody.
Yashikor.
Thank you.
Nice. See, this was nice. Now this is yevamos. That's good. I like.
Mazel tov.
Baruch Hashem.